Polaris Project. Polaris being the North Star that the slaves of the 1800s used to come north to find freedom.
It's great work. It's very rewarding work. It's sad work. I also see really positive things that come out of it. And I think, unfortunately, even though we're working with a lot of victims, we then learn as professionals on how to handle other cases or other situations. I specifically have been involved in being present when they're doing interviews to victims that they believe that they've identified as sex trafficking. And so more on the lines of a sting operation. And I am available as soon as the victim comes in. Law enforcement will leave so I can maintain privilege, confidentiality, and I'll speak with the women or the young girls. And it's really intense, and you have a very short amount of time because you have law enforcement that need to do what they need to do. Trying to, in a short amount of time, because that's really all you have with these victims before they leave, they run away again, their pimp gets in contact with them, is to build rapport and to and trust, because they've been beaten down emotionally and they've been taught not to trust anybody and that everyone is against them. So the time that we usually have, the crisis period, is challenging.
You don't know that I was forced, but you exposed me to pregnancy, STDs, and violence when I should have been in school. Instead of having sex with me, you could have made a difference in my life. Even if I didn't want to do this, where is the manhood in you to keep me from killing myself through disease or violence? A quote from a survivor named Star.
When I finally kind of came to and said, this is not acceptable, I thought I've got a couple of choices. One is I can either kind of forget that I ever witnessed this, or I can agree to make a difference. So I vowed that very day in India I would make a difference toward ending child slavery and human trafficking.
Carol Metzger met a young girl who is a survivor of sex trafficking while in Nepal, India. Her name is Mina.
She was rescued 2 weeks before you got here. She was rescued from enslavement in the circus. She was also rescued from sex slavery at 11 years old. And I just took a look at that child. One of my own daughters was 11 years old back in the U.S. while I was there in India. And I said, she could have been mine, except that I was born in a different country. And I made it all the way through the gate, back out again before I started crying. I felt like the entire world had turned upside down. I felt disillusioned. Slavery, wasn't this something that had been eradicated? One woman who allows me to share her story is named Anne-Marie. When she was 13, she was sexually abused by her brother. She went and told her mother. Her mother didn't want to hear it. Much to Anne-Marie's shock, surprise, and hurt, she was asked to sweep that information under the rug. And eventually feeling like there was no one who cared about her. Years went by, and Anne-Marie had that longing for that happy family. She said that she found a young man. All went very well for a number of years until she got the call who said that her daughter had been sexually abused by her brother. All the memories that she had squashed and tamped down came right back at her. All the hurt she had felt, that no one stuck up for her, no one seemed to care about her when that had happened to her, came back in spades. She did fight to put her brother in prison. She brought justice for her daughter, but her husband began drinking. Her marriage fell apart. Her relationship with her daughter dissolved. She ended up out on the streets. She ended up addicted to drugs. One day, she was beaten absolutely severely. When she got back from the hospital, there was a neighbor who was saying, "Let me love you, let me take care of you, that shouldn't have happened to you." And instead of being a kind neighbor who really was willing to help, he was a pimp from New York. She was trafficked for 10 years before she finally got help. She has become someone who is helping other women who were in the life that she once had. She has become a peer counselor after her recovery. and rehabilitation. I was working with a group of survivors one day, and we made something we were calling wish flags. It's something I've done in both India with girls who survived sex trafficking and with adult females here who have survived it. And that is taking just really brightly colored pieces of fabric and writing our dearest wish on it, then stringing them up on a clothesline. What do you care about? What would you be if you could be anything now that you are recovering? And I remember one fairly young woman said to me, I just want to be a normal person. If I could have any wish in the world, I would be normal.
One that sticks out, certainly that I'll never forget, was a woman who, we have two areas in this county that bring in a lot of crime, unfortunately, and that's Chester and Upper Darby. I mean, certainly crime happens everywhere in our county, and we're seeing it everywhere, but they bring in heavy volume of crime. And so this woman was from one of those areas, and was a single mom and really struggled with her own issue. She has a history of trauma, and she met this guy because her phone died, and she asked to call for a cab, and he said, sure, come with me, I'll give you a phone. It ended up being an abandoned home where he kept her captive for 2 to 3 days, raped her multiple times, beat her, mutilated her, and luckily at one point he fell asleep and she was able to call 911, and they were able to rescue her, and he's going to be serving about 25 to 50 years in state prison. And this was not, unfortunately, his first time doing this. So she is very, very strong woman. She's doing really well. She calls in frequently just to say hello. But that was a really emotionally difficult case to offer her some services because it was so violent. But she was great and very brave.
Delaware County Assault Services is currently working with, and have been for the past 2 years, with a woman who is from Guatemala, and she has been brought over here by her pimp.
She was promised everything, like I had said before: money, a job, family, a safe environment. She escaped from a very abusive situation. He used her and abused her. She was able to get out because she was involved in a group with other women, and she just trusted one of the women and actually disclosed to them. But it was 5 years she was in this situation, and so the woman introduced her to an immigration attorney. She's in a safe home. She's doing really well. We're helping her. Attorneys are helping her with documentation for her immigration status. She has one child now that she's caring for, so she's really on her road to recovery. We were very successful in prosecuting a very bright engineer student because what he was doing was sitting in a local bar restaurant where a lot of people went on the weekends and socialized, and he was using GHB to drug his victims. And so unfortunately, one young woman was there socializing. They met him. He's very charming. From an outsider's point of view, he looks very stable, and they trusted him, and so he ended up drugging her. And with GHB or Rohypnol, the date rape drugs, they come out of your system very quickly. So most people don't run to the hospital, get tested, and then someone's arrested. It can take up to 6 to 12 hours, and it's out of your system. But this young lady woke up, went right to the hospital with our assistance and with local law enforcement. We identified it as a possible date rape drug, and they found evidence, and they conducted a search warrant where he had other ingredients down on campus where he was probably going to manufacture more to administer to other women. And he also had child pornography on his computers, so they seized all that, and now he's serving very many years in state prison.
If you see a woman, she's a human being. She's somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, or she's somebody's mother.